The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom was draped in gold and lit with soft chandeliers. But the mood turned icy as Victor Miller, in his tailored tuxedo, raised his champagne glass with a smug smile. Beside him stood a stunning woman in a flowing red dress. Young, confident, and very pregnant. "Everyone," Victor began, his voice smooth as silk, "meet Olivia Rhodes, the new creative director of Miller Development and the future of our company, and of my life." Gasps echoed among the 200 elite guests. Camera flashes lit up the stunned expressions. But all Eleanor Miller could see was Victor's arm tightening around Olivia's waist. Sitting in her wheelchair near the edge of the stage, partially obscured behind a large floral arrangement, Eleanor's knuckles turned white as she gripped the armrests. She and Victor had been married for 12 years. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a public execution of everything they had built together. Victor looked at her then. That look, half pity, half condescension, burned more than the betrayal. "Sometimes life gives you a second chance at happiness," he added, turning toward Olivia with pride. "And then something happened that no one expected." Eleanor smiled. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't forced. It was calm, cold, and quietly terrifying. Victor blinked, his voice faltering mid-toast. 3 years earlier, they had been the golden couple of architecture, he, the charming negotiator, she, the visionary architect. Their modern glass home perched over the San Francisco skyline like a monument to success. They had co-founded Miller plus Chin's Sustainable Design, built it from student loans into a firm recognized for award-winning eco-developments. They weren't just partners in business, they were partners in life. But that illusion shattered on a rainy November morning when Eleanor fell from the 14th floor of their newest development. A platform had collapsed during her site inspection, something that should have been impossible under her strict safety protocols. The fall fractured her spine, stole her mobility, and, slowly, her career. After 3 surgeries, Eleanor could walk short distances with aids but relied on a wheelchair for daily life. The once indefatigable architect found herself shuttled between rehab and hospital beds while Victor quietly reshaped the narrative. To the public, he remained the doting husband, funding her care, speaking at fundraisers, kissing her forehead at charity galas. But at home, he was absent, cold, and efficient, more caretaker than companion. Eleanor watched from the shadows at events like tonight as Victor worked rooms filled with power. He laughed charmed and made the mayor laugh so hard she spilled her wine. But with Eleanor, his eyes were glass. He saw her as a symbol of what he had survived, of what he had lost. She had started to feel invisible until this evening when Victor made it official. As she sat there, his arm around Olivia, smiling like the world owed him congratulations, Eleanor didn't cry. Not anymore. Because she knew something Victor didn't. She had a secret, and it was going to destroy him. In the months following her accident, Eleanor had tried to hold on to her identity, to her marriage, to her role in the company. But it was like trying to grip sand. Everything slipped away, slowly, quietly, until she was left with only fragments of her old life. Victor was always there in the beginning, holding her hand in the hospital, remodeling their home with accessibility features, speaking emotionally at events about Eleanor's inspiring strength. But behind closed doors, the cracks began to show. At home, Victor became methodical, helpful in a way that felt more clinical than loving. He organized her medications, her therapy appointments, and her meals like a nurse handling a patient. He told her not to stress about work, to focus on healing. But every time she asked about company matters, she was met with, "It's already taken care of," or worse, "It's too complicated right now." Gradually, she was cut off from clients, from her team, from decisions. Her designs were reviewed by others. Projects she had started were reassigned. The final blow came during the annual Berkeley Foundation fundraiser. Eleanor, dressed elegantly, had positioned herself near the edge of the grand ballroom. From there, she could observe Victor, still handsome, still magnetic, captivating city planners and investors. At one point, he approached with Commissioner Lang and placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "Here's the woman behind our accessibility initiatives," he said with practiced warmth. "My wife insists on making every building inclusive." Eleanor forced a smile. "It's not just a suggestion. It's how design should be universal." The commissioner nodded politely, but the conversation was already moving away from her. Victor pivoted with elegance, steering the commissioner into discussions about zoning variances as if Eleanor hadn't spoken at all. It was a moment she wouldn't forget, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed a truth she'd been denying. She wasn't Victor's partner anymore. She was his prop. That night, in their high-tech, modern home, once their dream project, Eleanor wheeled herself into their bedroom, noting how Victor was already in bed, scrolling his phone. He didn't look up when she entered. He didn't help her into bed anymore. He didn't ask how she felt or what her doctor had said. She was starting to feel like a roommate, an inconvenience wrapped in polite silence. Still, she tried to stay hopeful. When Victor mentioned a business trip to Chicago, she suggested she come along. "I haven't traveled in months," she said. "It might do me good." Victor didn't even look up. "Eleanor, be realistic. Traveling in your condition, it's too complicated. I need to be focused." That night, she stared at the ceiling from her hospital-grade adjustable bed, separated from Victor by a sterile distance. She wasn't just recovering from an accident, she was disappearing. The following morning, Eleanor received a text that would change everything. From an unknown number, "You deserve to know the truth about your husband." Attached was a photo of Victor outside a private clinic, his hand resting gently on a pregnant woman's belly, Olivia's belly. The timestamp showed it was taken just the day before, during the hours Victor claimed to be in back-to-back board meetings. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she held the phone. But her mind? It snapped into focus. She knew then that Victor wasn't just lying. He was building a new life. And Eleanor? She was going to find out how far he was willing to go to erase her from the old one. Victor came home late that evening, loosened his tie, and poured himself a glass of scotch like it was any other night. Eleanor sat in her wheelchair near the fireplace, the photo of Victor and Olivia burning a hole in her pocket. She kept her voice light. "How was the board presentation?" "Successful," Victor replied without looking at her. "We secured the funding for the Westridge expansion." He took a long sip, relaxing into the leather chair across from her. Eleanor's fingers grazed the phone in her lap. "And Olivia Rhodes? Who is she?" Victor paused only for a second, just enough to catch. Then he shrugged casually. "Project manager for Westridge. Promising, young." "Why?" She didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out her phone and handed it to him. "I got this today." Victor looked at the photo, his expression unreadable. He set the phone down on the table and took another sip before speaking. "You're having me followed now? Someone sent it to me." "I don't know who," she said. Victor let out a cold laugh. "And you just believed it? You jumped to the worst conclusion, Eleanor. That's your problem, you've become so bitter." "She's pregnant," Eleanor said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Yes, she is. And her husband is thrilled." Victor's voice was perfectly smooth. "Greg Rhodes, he works for Goldman. You met him at the Christmas party." The lies were layered and fast, designed to confuse, to shake her footing. He offered just enough detail to make it plausible. She felt faint. "I accompanied her to the clinic. That's all." Eleanor wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in the man who once held her face in his hands and said she was the best part of his life. But that man was gone. Later that night, as Victor slept soundly beside her, Eleanor stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with memories, moments that no longer made sense. subtle inconsistencies, convenient travel schedules, Olivia's sudden rise in the company, Victor's reluctance to let Eleanor review new projects. And now this. The next morning, Eleanor made a quiet decision. If Victor had nothing to hide, he wouldn't fear her looking deeper. "Agnes," she said to their longtime housekeeper after breakfast, "I'd like to work on some design inspiration today. Can you help me set up in Victor's office? The light's better in there." The request sounded innocent, and Agnes, unaware of anything unusual, complied without question. Once alone, Eleanor placed a small wireless camera, one she had originally purchased for home security, between two books on Victor's shelf. It had a clear view of the desk. She didn't stop there. She searched the drawers slowly, methodically. Most were filled with business documents, but in the bottom drawer, she found a small key. Over the next few days, Eleanor established a new routine. She'd watch the recorded footage on her tablet every evening, searching for anything Victor might be hiding. For the first few nights, there was nothing out of place. But then, on a quiet Tuesday night, she saw something. Victor entered the office, locked the door, and made a call. She couldn't hear his words, but his face. His face was alive in a way it hadn't been in months. He smiled. He blushed. He wrote something down. Then, using the small key she had found, he unlocked the drawer Eleanor had already searched, revealing a hidden compartment. From it, he pulled out a black book, a ledger. The next morning, while Victor visited a construction site, Eleanor used the key and retrieved the ledger. Her hands shook as she flipped through its pages. Offshore accounts, wire transfers, notes like, "Oh car" and "Oh medical." "Oh, Olivia." Eleanor took photos of every page. That same afternoon, she called Diana, her former colleague from their early days at the firm. "Eleanor? Oh my God. It's been so long. How are you?" "Managing," Eleanor replied. Then, without preamble, "Diana, do you know anything about an employee named Olivia Rhodes?" There was a pause. Then, quietly, "Yes. Young. Very poised. Victor's very invested in her career. There have been rumors." "And is she married? To a man named Greg?" Diana's laugh was short and dry. "No. Olivia makes a point of telling everyone she's single." The truth hit Eleanor like a wave, but oddly, it didn't crush her. It cleared her mind. That evening, when Victor said he'd be traveling to Seattle for 3 days, Eleanor didn't argue. She just nodded. Inside, she was already planning her next move. Because if Victor thought she was weak, confused, and broken, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. Eleanor was done playing the passive wife. The more she uncovered, the more clarity sharpened her instincts. She reached out to the one person who had never treated her like she was broken, Martina, her physical therapist. "I need a favor," Eleanor said bluntly one morning after a therapy session. Martina raised a brow. "What kind of favor?" "I need you to help me follow my husband. I think he's having an affair." There was a pause, the kind that falls between disbelief and loyalty. Then, with a determined breath, Martina said, "Pick you up at 7. Wear black." That night, hidden in Martina's Honda parked across from an upscale restaurant, Eleanor sat with a pair of binoculars resting on her lap. At 8:15 p.m., Victor arrived, surprisingly not in his sleek Tesla but in an Uber. 10 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up. Olivia stepped out, her pregnancy now unmistakable. Eleanor's stomach twisted as she watched Victor greet Olivia with a kiss, not professional, not platonic. He placed a protective hand over her belly, beaming. "I've seen enough," Eleanor murmured. "What now?" Martina asked. "Now I find out how deep this goes." Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor worked like an investigator. She dug through Victor's financial documents, combed through credit card bills, and found jewelry purchases she had never received. Airline tickets to Napa. Hotel stays she hadn't approved. More damning, she found property records for a penthouse Victor bought in his name alone. The listed address? The Archer, a luxury building still under construction by Miller Development. The most devastating moment came when she discovered a small velvet box hidden in a drawer beneath a false bottom in Victor's office. Inside wasn't a ring or necklace, it was a sonogram. Labeled Baby Miller, 24 weeks. Olivia's name was printed clearly in the corner. As she stared at the image, her hand trembled. But she didn't cry. Not anymore. Then Victor's voice rang out from the hallway. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Eleanor slowly turned to face him. Her voice was calm. "Finding the truth." Victor's face twisted in fury. "You had no right to go through my things." "No right," she echoed. "I'm your wife. That sonogram should have been ours." Victor stepped closer, face flushed. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You're too emotional. Hysterical. The doctors warned me this might happen. Psychological trauma, paranoia." Eleanor's jaw clenched. Don't you dare try to make this about my mental health." "I've been worried for months," Victor said, his tone now dripping with false concern. "The cameras, the accusations. This isn't normal, Eleanor. You need help." "What I need," she said firmly, "is a divorce lawyer." Something dark passed over Victor's expression. "If that's what you think is best, just remember any judge will consider your mental state, especially with your erratic behavior. You really want to fight me on this?" That night, Eleanor overheard Victor on the phone just outside her door. "She found the sonogram." "No, don't worry. I've been documenting her instability. We'll move forward with the psychological evaluation. The lawyer says we have options." He was trying to erase her, legally, medically, and financially. The next morning, Eleanor woke up more focused than ever. She gathered every pill bottle from her medicine cabinet and brought them to Martina. "Can you take a look at these?" Martina examined the bottles carefully. Her eyes darkened. "Eleanor, these dosages are too high. Some of these medications are outdated and known to cause memory issues. Who's managing this?" "Victor." Eleanor swallowed. "He says it's easier if he tracks it all. He gives me the pills every morning and night. You need to see a new neurologist. One not connected to him." Martina referred her to Dr. Sarah Winters. A week later, Eleanor sat in a sunlit office while Dr. Winters flipped through her medical records, frowning deeply. "Mrs. Miller, these medications are not recommended for your condition anymore, and the dosages are unusually aggressive. Blood work confirmed the worst. Eleanor's system had high concentrations of medications she hadn't even known she was taking. Medications designed to keep her foggy, slow, and submissive. Dr. Winters helped her safely taper off the drugs. Within 10 days, Eleanor could feel her body responding. She was clearer, stronger. Her memory returned like a rising tide. "You've made more progress in 2 weeks than you have in months," Martina said during a session. Clarity brought courage. Eleanor hired a private investigator, Clara Jenkins. Efficient, sharp, discreet. Within days, Clara returned with a damning revelation. "Victor and Olivia have been involved for over 16 months, Clara reported. "They met at a development conference in Chicago 3 months before your accident." Eleanor's heart sank. 3 months before the fall. "There's more," Clara added cautiously. "I pulled the inspection records from the site where you fell. That temporary platform? It was flagged as unstable. But someone signed off that the repairs were complete." Eleanor stiffened. "Who signed it?" Clara hesitated. Victor Miller. The room tilted. Eleanor had always believed her accident was tragic, a misstep, a failure in oversight. But now a possibility crept in that chilled her to her core. Victor hadn't just replaced her. He may have tried to remove her. The weight of what Eleanor had discovered should have broken her. Instead, it sharpened her. Victor wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a man who had manipulated her body, her mind, her career, and quite possibly orchestrated the accident that took her mobility. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated destruction. She took a breath and called Rafael Dominguez, an attorney known for his work in elder abuse and medical exploitation cases. Though Eleanor wasn't elderly, her case met every criteria of caregiver manipulation. "This is classic gaslighting and financial fraud," Rafael said, scanning the documents Clara and Eleanor had compiled. "And the medication control? Potentially criminal." They developed a strategy: stay quiet, gather more evidence, and expose Victor publicly when the time was right. Meanwhile, Eleanor made her greatest deception yet. She played the helpless wife. She continued taking placebos instead of the drugs Victor provided, letting him believe she was still slow and foggy. She even praised him for planning the upcoming company gala, which Victor informed her smugly would be hosted at their home to make it easier for you to attend. But Eleanor already knew the real reason. Through Diana, she had learned Victor's plan. He was going to publicly announce Olivia as his new partner, both in business and in life. "He's going to humiliate you in your own home," Martina said when Eleanor told her. Eleanor didn't flinch. Then it's the perfect stage. For 3 weeks, Eleanor trained harder than ever. 3 times a week, she left home for what Victor believed were art therapy sessions. In truth, Martina and a new rehabilitation specialist were helping her rebuild muscle strength, coordination, and stamina. The progress was staggering. She could now stand for extended periods, walk short distances with a cane, and hold conversations with complete clarity. The woman Victor thought he had silenced was gone. In her place stood someone reborn, with a mind sharper and more dangerous than he ever anticipated. She reconnected with her twin sister Elise, a cybersecurity expert whom Victor had gradually pushed out of Eleanor's life under the guise of emotional strain. But now Elise returned with fire in her eyes. "He always said you were too tired to talk, that you needed rest. I knew something was off when you stopped responding to my birthday gifts," Elise said tearfully during their reunion. Together, they hacked into Victor's files. What they uncovered stunned even Rafael. Hidden bank transfers to offshore accounts, correspondence with Olivia dating back to before the accident, emails to doctors instructing them to emphasize Eleanor's instability, and even research into drugs that caused cognitive decline. Most damning of all, financial documents showing that Victor had embezzled over $2 million from the foundation Eleanor had created to support accessibility initiatives. That money had gone into luxury cars, jewelry, Olivia's penthouse, and even personal travel, all under the guise of charitable spending. "He used your life's work to fund his new life," Elise said, her voice trembling. Eleanor's voice was firm. "Then we'll use it to bring him down." The gala was the perfect opportunity. Through Elise's tech skills, they hijacked the home's AV system so Eleanor could take over the presentation at the right moment. Hidden cameras were installed. Clara coordinated with law enforcement, the medical board, the SEC, and investigative journalist Camila Vega, known for exposing high-level corruption. "We go public at the gala," Eleanor said, her voice steady. "Let him make his announcement. Let him have his moment. And then, Rafael added, you bury him with the truth." In the final week, Victor grew more smug, more self-satisfied. He smiled when Eleanor asked if she should wear something muted for the gala. "Yes, nothing too loud," he said. "We want the evening to be elegant." Eleanor smiled back. "Of course, dear. Elegant." He didn't notice how her eyes had changed. The night before the gala, Victor brought her a cup of tea, her usual blend, bitter with medication. She took the cup, pretended to sip, and emptied it into the potted plant beside her bed once he left. She'd done it so many times now, it was second nature. As she set the cup down, she called out softly, "Victor?" He paused in the doorway. "Yes. Do you remember what you said to me the day you proposed?" He blinked, surprised. "I said a lot that day. You said you loved my mind, that I was the smartest person you'd ever met." Victor smiled, nostalgic. "Yes, I remember that." Eleanor nodded, her voice quiet. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately." As the door closed behind him, her expression changed. He thought she was broken. But tomorrow she would show him she was the storm. The grand finale. The morning of the gala dawned crisp and clear, a perfect autumn day. Victor was already bustling around the house by 7 a.m., directing decorators, instructing caterers, adjusting lighting. Their luxurious glass home had been transformed into a stunning event space, elegant, immaculate, and ready for over 200 influential guests. Eleanor took her time preparing. She chose a midnight blue gown she hadn't worn in years, the one Victor used to call his favorite. When she asked Agnes to help her into it, Victor frowned. "Are you sure?" he asked. The stylists brought more functional options. "I want to wear this one," Eleanor replied, her tone even. "It reminds me of who I am." He didn't protest. He didn't realize she was reclaiming her armor. By 6:30 p.m., Eleanor sat just outside the main reception area, watching the guests arrive one by one. The room glimmered with crystal and candlelight, and Victor moved through the crowd like a seasoned politician, kissing cheeks, shaking hands, charming investors. Just after 8:30, Eleanor saw the sleek black town car arrive. Olivia emerged, radiant in a gold silk gown, her pregnancy on full display. Victor met her at the entrance and kissed her cheek before placing a proud hand on her belly. The murmurs began instantly. Guests turned. Some looked surprised. Others pretended not to notice. At 9 p.m. sharp, Victor tapped his champagne glass for attention and walked onto the small stage. Behind him, the massive projector screen flickered to life, displaying the Miller Development logo. "Friends, colleagues, visionaries," he began, his voice steady and practiced. "Thank you for joining us for this special evening. Tonight, we mark the beginning of something bold, something new." Images of futuristic buildings and lush green developments filled the screen. He spoke with passion, weaving in words like sustainability, legacy, and leadership. Then came the pivot. "I'm honored to introduce a brilliant talent who will shape our company's future," he said. "Olivia Rhodes, our new creative director, and the mother of my child." Gasps swept the room. Some guests looked at Eleanor. Others looked away. Olivia walked to the stage, Victor's arm around her waist. Eleanor slowly wheeled herself forward. Victor saw her movement and faltered. "Eleanor, perhaps it's best if I'd like to say a few words," she said firmly, cutting him off. The room stilled. Victor, boxed in by his own performance, forced a smile and handed her the microphone. Eleanor turned toward the crowd. "Thank you, Victor. That was quite the announcement. A child is indeed a blessing, regardless of the circumstances of its conception." More murmurs. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. "I've known about Victor and Olivia for some time," Eleanor continued, voice strong and clear. "Just as I've known about the penthouse at the Archer, the car, the jewelry, all paid for by funds stolen from the foundation we built to help disabled communities." Victor moved to interrupt, but Eleanor raised a hand. "I'm not done." She clicked the small remote in her lap. The screen behind her changed, flashing from glossy architectural renderings to medical records. "These are my prescription records," she said. And here, the screen split are the ones Victor sent to my doctors. Notice the changes. Increased dosages. Sedatives. Drugs known to impair memory. Victor's smile was gone. Victor didn't just betray me with an affair, Eleanor said. He tried to erase me medically, legally, professionally. He manipulated my medication to keep me foggy and docile. To claim I was mentally unstable. The room was silent. But I stopped taking those pills 2 months ago, Eleanor said. With real medical support, I started therapy again. And slowly, I came back to myself. She clicked the remote again. Financial spreadsheets filled the screen. Over $8 million in company funds and charitable donations diverted to offshore accounts. Jewelry. Luxury travel. Even Olivia's penthouse. Bought using money meant to install wheelchair ramps in public schools. Enough, Victor snapped, lunging toward her. She's delusional. Before he could reach her, several guests stepped in. Commissioner Lang stood. Mr. Miller, is this true? Eleanor didn't flinch. He won't answer. But this will. One last click. The screen played the grainy footage from the construction site. Victor inspecting the unstable platform on the morning of Eleanor's accident, followed by a shot of him handing the foreman an envelope. The audience recoiled. 2 days later, he paid to have this footage deleted, she said. But someone saved a copy. Victor staggered back, pale and sweating. Then Eleanor did the unthinkable. She pushed her wheelchair's brakes, placed her hands on the armrests, and stood. The entire room gasped. She pulled a folding cane from the bag attached to her chair and took 3 steady steps forward. I can walk now, Victor. Not far, not fast, but enough to stand up for myself. Victor's eyes widened in horror. This is a setup. No, Victor, Eleanor said. This is justice. As if on cue, the front doors opened. A team of agents entered, one stepping forward with a badge. Mr. Victor Miller, said Special Agent Larson of the FBI, we need to speak with you regarding financial crimes, wire fraud, and medical exploitation. Victor was escorted from the room. Eleanor stood tall, cane in hand, surrounded by stunned applause and tearful colleagues. Olivia approached slowly, visibly shaken. I didn't know, she whispered. He told me you refused treatment, that you were mentally unstable. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. I'm not your enemy. He used us both. Later, as the crowd cleared and the authorities collected evidence, Martina came to Eleanor's side. You were magnificent. Eleanor nodded. He thought he could humiliate me here, in this house. She looked around at the remnants of the gala. But this wasn't my humiliation. She glanced down at her cane. It was my rebirth.